Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Fantasy Football University, FFU, coming at you yet again in the offseason, leading into the NFL draft. We are so excited to be with you guys. I am Mr. Bildakusas. I'm here with Mr. Tom Lang. Mr. Lang, are you ready for some draft action?
Yeah, it's been a wild off season. It's been a lot of crazy stuff happening on and off the field. So I'm definitely interested in talking about a little bit of that today. Some could be in the bedroom as well too. Who knows? But
Resort room. We'll get
yeah, the resort bedroom. But who knows? Who knows? But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to speaking about the draft that's happening next week and some specific, particular teams that need some players to bolster their roster, and whether it's offensive line, whether it's defense, or whether it's, positional player. Definitely big conversations to have fantasy wise here.
Yeah, we have some interesting predictions, which we'll get into. Um, I'm really excited for the draft. I know that from on a personal note, you and I are both hoping that our teams don't mess it up, which is very likely to happen. We'll find out.
Well, for my team, I mean, they haven't really been messing anything up. They've been like cleaning up 1,000 times messes that they've created the past couple years,
That's right.
just
Other than
within the past
offensive
couple weeks.
coordinator, they're good to go, man.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
All right. Well, we got two bits of major news. One is super fun, and one is a bit more clerical. Let's start with the clerical thing. We didn't cover it. It got announced, I think, like very shortly after our show. The last time we did it was so Kirk Cousins has been acquired by the I was about to say the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders. So it's basically a foregone conclusion that Fernando Mendoza is going to be drafted to the Raiders themselves. Let's just assume that's going to happen. We'll talk about him for 2 seconds today. So, in your opinion, what should the Raiders be doing at quarterback this year, and what is your prediction of what they will do?
Well, I mean, they're taking Fernando Mendoza. There's like no question about it. It's
I mean,
100%.
how they handle who's starting for the rest of the
Well,
year.
I think Kirk Cousins, starts, and he starts probably the entire season. I think that would probably be the most correct approach for a team that's building for the future. Kirk Cousins didn't look half bad towards the end of last year. That Achilles at 40 years old does take some time for it to heal. And we saw, Aaron Rodgers playing really well towards certain games, after, at the end of his tenure with the Jets, like 4 or 5 games to the end of the season. Last year, I think he played fairly well last year, to be honest. He just didn't have a lot of talent around him. But going to Las Vegas, I mean, Fernando Mendoza is going to get drafted there. Fernando Mendoza is going to basically sit behind Kirk Cousins, who still's got, talent. They're not trying to win this year, right? There's no reason. It's not going to happen. Um, so they're going for, the year 2027 and beyond. That's what it should be.
If that's the
Um,
case, why not just throw him in there initially, Cam Ward style?
because we all know how that works. We spoke about that. You have to tutor a quarterback. It doesn't matter what kind of quarterback he is. In college, coming into full speed NFL, it's 1,000 times faster. So he's got to get his reps with the second team. Then he's got to work his way up to the first team reps. But he's got Kirk Cousins in front of him who can win some games, and it's not like they're going to just try to tank because they got the quarterback they're looking for. So I think that it's a solid move, and this was not a break the bank ordeal for Kirk Cousins, though he did get him $20 million, which is still nice, but it's not starting quarterback money. But I don't think he really needs it after all the contracts he's earned with guaranteed money.
No, maybe not. His agent has earned an A+ on his report card for his entire career. Um, if it's like if you were in charge of the team and you wanted to maximize Mendoza's production for the future, like let's assume that Kirk is just not an absolute disaster this year. Would you prefer that he sits the entire season, or do you think
100%.
okay?
I
As
mean,
long as
I'm
Kirk
not,
is
I'm not,
functional for the
I'm not
team.
saying, yeah, as long as he's functional and he's not like a detriment to the other players on the
Right.
roster, then yeah, I mean, they made you know the Raiders made some really good moves this offseason with bolstering their offensive line. They have Ashton Genty back there as well too. He's obviously going to be producing a little bit better than he did last year, this upcoming year. So I think he's a forgotten entity, and he's definitely somebody that should be on a lot of people's radar based on what they've done to that roster. But I'm not saying this is going to be an Aaron Rodgers effect, but I think that he's going to be on the bench for a full year and possibly two. Who knows? I think that would be the smartest approach. I mean, you got Tom Brady in the ownership box out there, so maybe they take a page out of Bill Belichick's book or somebody's book, figure things out, and you don't have to throw them to the wolves.
Maybe. On the fantasy side of it, let's assume then you're right, and it's Kirk Cousins. Let's just say for the whole year, or at least the functional part of the fantasy season. Obviously, I know how you feel. That's a significant improvement over Geno Smith.
Significant. I mean,
Um,
and they also brought in Jalen Naylor on a massive contract. So,
they have the connection from Minnesota.
yep,
So I mean, I think Kirk is good enough to supply decent enough production for Brock Bowers. I mean,
100%.
I have no issues ranking Brock Bowers. We're probably gonna have Bowers ranked as number two, probably. I mean, I don't want to overspeak. We'll see that when we get in the off season,
But
but
then also, like I said, this is going to be huge for Ashton Genty as well too.
right.
There's going to be little out routes. He does. Kirk Cousins does like doing little dump routes as well too. But he's a play action. Where he thrives is in the play action. So they're going to be 50-50 and run the throw on the ball. So
Yep. No, I agree with you 100%. And we'll get to it today when we talk about it. Like, if I'm the Raiders, I do nothing but draft like O line and defense then,
yeah.
basically, in the draft. We'll get to that. All right, so we have one other bit of interesting news, which we are excited to get to. So, if anybody's been living under a rock, even for people who aren't even necessarily football fans, if you've just been watching TMZ, we have the whole Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel situation. So, obviously, let's just catch everybody up who wasn't sure. So, obviously, there are pictures of Diana Rossini and Mike Vrabel out at some resort. And of course, they're embracing and lovingly, et cetera, et cetera. And oh, wait a minute, both Mike Vrabel and Diana Rossini are married. Now, I want to ask you this because this we could go on a tangent about this. I think the fact that they're both married obviously is a scandal and it's a big deal and we should all care about it. Fine. But I think it's a bigger deal that you've got a reporter for the NFL who may or may not be learning information or getting, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a conflict of interest there that like now, like therefore he could say things or not say things or she could do things. I think that's the bigger part of it. Do you disagree?
No, I fully agree. I mean, there was talks about how she was pushing AJ Brown to the Patriots all season last
That's
year.
right. That's right. Yeah.
But then on top of that, I mean, I don't think they're the only ones. There has to be you got to be if that's the case, you got to be slick and smart about that because you're in the spotlight all day long. I'm not condoning it, but for real, like they're not the only ones that are doing this. You're gonna have other people out there. That's why people get insight. Adam Schefter's definitely with somebody out there.
I don't even want to think about
But
Schefter's been hooking up with Andy Reid. No, no, no. Let's not.
no, it's got to be somebody high up that knows everything.
Okay. Well, it's not like he's on an email basis with some people. That's a perfectly more accessible way of getting information. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we just found out today that Dan Orsini has resigned from the Athletic.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, honestly, I think that is even more of an eyeball right there. That's that, it shows you that they did do something wrong. Resigning that quick off of something like that, you could just brush it off if it's not true, and you could go through all this stuff and whatever it is, but you're clearly stating something is, Something's off.
I might disagree with you there. People resign all the time just for something that is a bad look, but and then they go on to deny all of the allegations, what the thing, even though everybody like that's not necessarily like a thing.
What is she going to write a book on how she was found in the midnight twilight with a NFL coach that's married and she's married and her husband is the owner
Uh,
of was it Shake Shack or one of the head honchos there?
I know, and the internet is undefeated because they're going back and finding every clip of Diana Rossini where she had, quote, said something negative about her husband or about her relationship or had insinuated that she had done something. And there's a lot of
Something
them.
wild in Miami.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I encourage everybody to go on the internet and go check it out. And but I just gave the internet credit. Now I'm about to take it away because if you go and look on the internet, you could already see the rumblings of this thing. You know that there's going to be a gigantic swath of people who are going to like defend her and be like, well, she was driven into the arms of another man because of how bad, and on his behalf too, the cheating defense people. This is a fantasy football podcast. We're not going to get too deep into the philosophy of dating and all that. But what we will say is that from a strictly football perspective, we're in agreement. You cannot have this. This is a conflict of interest. What do you think the repercussions are going to be for Vrabel? Anything?
I think it's going to be drawn out and it's be forgotten about, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe you're right. You know that there's going to be people in the stands. It's going to get brought up anytime that there's somebody interviewing him. This is going to be the
Well,
gift that
what's
keeps on
really going
giving
to
this
happen
year.
is, him and his wife are going to stay married
Oh
until
yeah.
after his career with the Patriots is over, and then they're going to get divorced, and then he's going to turn into Bill Belichick, dating a 15-year-old girl when he's 85, and yeah, craziness, craziness.
Maybe. It's such a crazy situation. I'm so amazed by it. Anyway, we could we can talk about that all day long. I actually, just a quick aside, I cannot think of a story that just brought me more joy this off season than that whole situation. Anyway, we can move past that. So ready to jump into a little bit of NFL draft preview, a little bit of
Yeah, even
predictions
though
and
we
stuff.
covered Fernando Mendoza completely already, yeah, we can move on to round two,
Yeah,
or draft pick two.
yeah, so let's jump into this. So we're going to start at we're going to talk about the prospects fairly loosely. I mean, we'll
Yeah,
we'll go in depth here or there where we see fit.
yeah, we're not going to get into like deep rounds and stuff like that, talking about where we think, but like, we'll talk about,
First
and
couple
as
guys,
yeah,
yeah.
first couple guys, we're going to go through like the big names and then the fantasy repercussion, that will happen to some of these rosters based on, where these players go.
Yeah, so we're going to reference Pro Football Focus. We do have a lot of referencing of Pro Football Focus during the year, so happy to give it up to them. We're going to reference them for their evaluation of the prospects in order. And in terms of where we think they might end up, or where we think they might end up, we're just going to reference various different mock drafts and where people might have said. And you'll find that there's a lot of consensus among a lot of let's call them experts, for lack of a better word, across which people land, but they're good, for the most part, people are good at prognosticating. Let's start at the quarterback position. So no surprise, we talked about him a little bit. Fernando Mendoza, he's going to go to the Raiders. We won't spend too much time on this, and hopefully that his career is. We have high hopes for him. So hopefully, whatever their plan is for him, aka with and without Kirk Cousins, it turns out to be good. So,
You
real
don't
quick,
think you don't, I know we talked about, Vegas is set, but you don't think the Jets are going to just throw the bank at Vegas for Fernando Mendoza?
no, no, I don't. I don't. I think there's nothing the Raiders could do to get rid of that. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Vegas is set. Like if you notice, it'll say on any of the apps, FanDuel, DraftKings, Fernando Mendoza, number one pick minus 58 million or whatever. But like it's
So,
not
and
saying what team.
I want to say this though. I want to say this. Whoever is drafting at number one, whether it's the Jets or the Vegas Raiders, which it is the Vegas Raiders right now, do not take all 10 minutes. Okay?
Maybe they're like doing something to field
No,
other
like
offers in
no,
the future.
this is exactly, they're fielding their offers right now. They've been fielding their offers since they got the number one overall pick.
Okay.
They the draft, when what's his name goes up, commissioner goes up and says The NFL draft has begun, right? Dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Fernando Mendoza has been drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, congratulations. All right, New York Jets, you're on the clock.
Well, right. And I know it is aggravating sometimes. Although there's been teams that have missed picks before. So I mean, I suppose they're doing something wrong or right, depending on that. Anyway, that's Fernando Mendoza. He's going to go number one. And he's going to go to the Raiders. They're not going to trade it away. So it is what it is. Let's jump to a more interesting thing. Number two, Ty Simpson. So this is the guy that there's been some controversy online about this, about that they think that the Simpson people have been paying Dan Orlovsky to be saying that he's better than Fernando Mendoza and therefore he should be drafted higher. Obviously, we're going to assume that that's all baloney, but Orlovsky does think Simpson's very good. Okay, in a lesser quarterback class, we've already expounded on our feelings about it doesn't even matter in the end anyway. You get great picks other places in the draft. Sometimes just the evaluators are what they are. Anyway, Ty Simpson, what do you make of Ty Simpson being underrated? You think there's anything to that?
Um, I think Alabama's defense was not that great last year, and they haven't been that great for the past couple of years. They've been up and down. They'll get blown out and then they'll blow out a team. They'll have competitive games, and so I feel like Ty Simpson is not a deep thrower. He is a situational quarterback. He's not super tall for being a quarterback. He's 6'2", 208 pounds. So he's for a quarterback, he's still tall. He's like kind of average. He's not at like, the big thing is Fernando Mendoza is 6'5". That extra 3 inches, looking over the offensive line does help. And you do know that. You're talking about, go back to Drew Brees, it was an anomaly how good he was. He just sometimes just chucked that ball down the field and had great accuracy. Ty Simpson is not that kind of player. He does obviously have another 3 inches on Breeze, but I don't see him being that kind of gunslinger. Um, Now, can he outperform and be a better quarterback than Fernando Mendoza? There is a possibility that he turns into that. We all saw that with Kirk Cousins to, RG3 drafted on the same team, same roster, years and years ago. Um, so there is that possibility, but I just don't see it happening. I think Ty Simpson is a solid quarterback. He's going to be an average, guy. He's not going to be a first day starter. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to be first day starters.
Oh, I agree with that. 100% I agree with that. Right now, it looks like a common place that he seems to be going is they actually have Ty Simpson in the first round from a couple of the mock drafts I'm seeing, pick number 21 to Pittsburgh. I was seeing some other mock drafts that he would go maybe in the second round to the Rams, something like that. But to your point, right? Like he might go behind veteran quarterbacks who are already there, maybe as a backup piece, maybe as something that could turn into something.
Yeah.
To some degree, I do think he's getting, like he's getting put down in a way that I kind of don't like in the media where they're saying, hey, it's Fernando Mendoza and everybody else, and it's a down quarterback year. And if you're the clear-cut second quarterback off the board, that can't feel good for you. So he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. But yeah, I agree. He's definitely not going to be starting this year.
No.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see if he fills in a game. So that's Ty Simpson. Yeah, I doubt he's going to see anything. I feel like, all the other quarterbacks, they're like, it looks like from the mock draft perspective, they're going to be going like late, like maybe they'll be lucky to break into the second or third round.
I think
So,
it's, you're going to see these quarterbacks probably hitting probably third, fourth round. You'll probably get three or four quarterbacks coming in the third, fourth round. Outside of that, Garrett Nussmeier, he was a good quarterback at LSU. He was no Joe Burrow, but he was a solid quarterback there. But, I don't know if his talents transferred to the NFL. Carson Beck, same situation.
I liked Carson Beck. I watched
I,
a game or two. I thought he had a lot of talent.
I think he has talent, but he's also 24 years old, so he's played on that NIL money. Anybody that could play 5, 6 years in college should be pretty solid. to be honest with you.
Maybe. I don't know.
My boy over in Clemson, Cade Klubnik, I could see him just being basically being an accountant in the next 3, 4 years. So, unfortunately, he was projected to be the Heisman to start the season, and that he just tanked it. So I really can't see unless things change. We've seen crazy things in this league. But outside of that, I mean, you got Diago Pavia. I don't see his talent transmitted to the NFL at all. So I really feel like this is a really weak quarterback class. To be honest, no,
Unless we
no,
get surprised in at some point, going
yeah, maybe
forward,
down the road,
somebody
but
turns into a Russell Wilson.
but
We
you're
don't know.
talking about like, we've known draft class that, there's quarterbacks that were long-term quarterbacks. There's 6, 7 players from one draft class that they were phenomenal, for years. And it happened multiple years, in the past 20 years that we really focusing on football. So,
Right.
we don't have that this year. And I don't think we have that next year, looking at next year. So,
Oh.
you know,
Well, you kind of parlayed there into just something I wanted to say because we kind of like alluded to it. Something I want to say right now about my New York Jets. If they mess this up and end up in trading up or doing something to invest in a quarterback, more than likely like a guy like Ty Simpson, something like that, um, because that would be something that would require an investment for it. I'm going to be so angry because to your point about next year, like Archie Manning is available next year. That's the guy who they should be going after. I don't care about if you want to say it's a down quarterback class or whatever it is. The Mannings are never going to let Archie Manning fail. Like it just won't happen.
he failed
So
last year.
it's college, it's a different thing. And fail is a strong word. But anyway, we'll see about that. I just wanted to address that before we move on. I do not want the Jets to screw this up. Anyway, you want to move on to wide receivers? Because now we'll get into some exciting players here.
Yeah, no, for sure.
All right. Let's talk about top guy on the draft here. Although top guy on the PFF, although it's debatable if he goes the first wide receiver off the board, straight out of wide receiver U, Carnell Tate from Ohio State. I saw him. I thought he was great, but we've said that about so many Ohio State receivers. So, like, and we've seen some of them fail. Like Marvin Harrison has not lived up to expectations as of yet. So, like, do you think maybe it's getting hyped too much just because it's Ohio State? Or do you like the talent more? How do you see him?
He's young. He's 21 years old, 6'3", 195. So he's not huge. He's not a big, heavy guy. I think, going into NFL, get into NFL shape, he's got to be in the 200s. He's got to be like at least 205, 210. For a guy his size, and hold that speed. I think honestly, he could be a nice solid like 1B receiver on a team that needs, that has a star talent. The Giants, are kind of looking at him there. I know the Giants potentially looking at, defense, but if
Yeah, the Giants are a common destination for him at pick five.
yeah, and I think that's where he's going to go.
Really?
Yeah, I think him paired with Malik Neighbors is going to be that would be fantastic. I think the only way that doesn't happen is if something falls through with the negotiation um, with Sexy Dexy Lawrence, and Dexter Lawrence gets traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Brian Thomas and pick,
Which would be amazing.
which
Which would be amazing.
which would be it would be an LSU connection again. So
Other common destinations for him I'm seeing are the Saints at pick 8 or the Rams at pick 13. Um, which is interesting. Now Olave is from Ohio State himself, right?
mhm.
Yeah, so maybe there's a connection there.
Yeah, but Chris
Um,
Olave has been out of college for a long time.
I'm of the opinion that he isn't the best receiver in the draft. I actually personally think that there's like a group of 5 to 6 receivers here that they're all in the same tier of goodness. So it's hard for me to pick out which one of them is better. I mean, let's just talk about the next guy real quick. Makai Lemon from USC. Smaller guy, but I thought he was very athletic. I thought he looked good on film. I watched one full USC game, and it must have been one of his best games because he completely flashed every every time he was on the screen. I noticed it. So, I mean, you just said the Giants at five. You'd prefer of all the receivers, you'd prefer Tate instead of Lemon or any of the other guys?
Yeah. So Makai Lemon kind of reminds me of uh um St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, that has not proven himself in the NFL
I
yet.
could see
Like
that.
he just is acting that way. And he's like kind of like trying to reinvent himself as him, in his talks. Um, I just think that you can talk about how you level yourself up as other players and stuff like that, but you got to prove it on the field before you start really talking that smack. Um, I think he's going to be a decent talent. Um, and when you get smacked around on shot, on plays, you'll see if you are that tough guy, right? So at an NFL level. So 21-year-old wide receiver, he's young. He's got a lot of run back, run on his legs left, and I think that he can make a difference on a roster. But personally, I just don't see the Giants going for that kind of, I'm not saying like they don't want that attitude, but I just feel like, he just will come into the building with too much attention on his shoulders, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm seeing a common destination for Lemon being either the Rams or the Jets. And just judging by some of the big boards here, so we should make a point. We're going to be talking about, like we said, we're going to go through a couple of receivers here. You're going to find a lot of common destinations among them because the community at large has identified these are teams with a wide receiver needed. That's the Saints, that's the Browns, the Jets, the Rams. Maybe throw in the Giants or the Ravens in there. And so you're
Mm,
going to see them a lot on these teams. And, to Tommy's point, if you're going to be getting one of these guys, maybe pick your best guy that, hits your fancy, whatever. I'm actually going to hold off on which receiver I want the Jets to get. We're going to get to him in a little bit. Uh, like I said, I think these guys are all in the same tier. There is one that is my favorite. We'll get to him in a little bit. So that's Makai Lemon. Jordan Tyson's the next guy on PFF. Really a darling of a lot of people in the media. Bigger guy. He's not as thin, let's say. He's not as light, couple pounds heavier, a tiny little bit shorter than Carnell Tate. Jordan Tyson out of ASU. Um, I thought his highlights were looking really good when they were putting them all over ESPN. What's your take on him?
yeah, I mean, he obviously was there when Scadaboo was on that roster as well too. So, and Scadaboo was pretty much the all-around guy. And, Jordan Tyson was able to show off last year his talents. I think he's a talented player. I don't really know too much about him, to be completely honest. But I do know that, he was on a pretty good roster the year prior, with, like I said, with Scadaboo. And I would like to see him basically, I think he could be basically a B receiver, a number two. Um, Slot receiver for him could be a nice little target.
I would say on the couple different programs that I was watching, he's definitely a favorite among a couple of different insiders who I like. You know, I would say he's from a talent perspective, he might be up there with Carnell Tate, but maybe we're just being partial to guys who are a little bit taller. I still think Makai Lemon's very talented.
Yeah.
The next guy on the list is actually my least favorite among the guys in this tier. It's Omar Cooper. I think Omar Cooper is a function of basically what was an unbelievable season by Indiana. Um, it's dominant, like the best quarterback in the country, dominant team, basically, like grinded their way to it. Like he's the player on the best team. And I don't want to say rarely, but it's always a red flag in my own mind. It's like you're kind of along for the ride. I'm not saying he's bad, but is he going to be, top tier wide receiver one, dominate your team? I don't think so. I wasn't blown away by his highlights. Honestly, when I was watching some of them, I was like, "This is Mendoza's so good." That's what I thought. Just,
Yeah.
just watching it. Still a good player. I'm looking at some of his projections, all the same places on the draft boards. It's going to be very similar to like that. So, again, I'd like it if he didn't go to the Jets. I'd prefer if he went to the Browns. That way, the Browns could have worse players. Um, let's go to that. Let's go to the next guy, and then we'll get to my favorite guy on here. So the next guy is Denzel Boston. Big dude, very big dude. He looked like a man among boys on the film that I was looking at. Um, so one of the things though is that like I think sometimes they get into where this guy needs to play and how he needs to play. Just because you're a big guy does not mean you need to never go on a slant route over the middle. It's like you can't do the Wes Welker stuff if you're Randy Moss or whatever. Um,
I
but
mean, it's smart to be able to have a guy that could run over the middle like that. I mean, you would think AJ Brown would be a perfect guy to do that, or DK Metcalf to take a little slant route over the middle and just run people over and barrel them. But hey,
I guess
Denzel
so.
Boston could be that guy.
He could out of Washington again. Super super talented guy, very big dude. Again, I mean, we'll see where he ends up. From a fantasy perspective, we should just mention real quick. From a fantasy perspective, the teams that I was mentioning, um, you know, I think the Ravens might be the best destination for any of these young guys, probably. Like you've got an established quarterback, good, ready to go. I mean, the Saints wouldn't be terrible. Obviously, the worst two are the Jets and the Browns, but I mean, the Giants would be fine. Although, again, we have to get all of them healthy to go before that goes on. All right. Last guy I want to talk about, unless you want to get into other guys, but last guy I want to talk about Casey Concepcion. He's by far my favorite guy on this list. PFF has him lower than all the other guys that we mentioned. I've seen him all over the place on draft boards, from the middle of the first to the top of the second, whatever. I he's a shorter guy, 5'11", whatever. I think sometimes heights are a little bit a little bit overemphasized. I thought he was great. I was blown away by his the way that he looked, the way that he moved. I found his quickness to be really great. It's going to be really difficult to cover him in the slot. I think he's unbelievable. And no reason why he can't run deep or whatever. Again, you don't need to run a 4.2 40 to be faster than everybody, a la Puka Nacua. I think he's unbelievable. I think he's great. Have you seen any A&M games this past year?
Yeah. Yeah. I also saw the playoff where they couldn't do anything on offense. So, that is a scary spot where, when, obviously both defenses were playing fantastic, but, if you're going to be a top-notch guy that's coming out, that's going to be a first-round pick, you gotta make some moves in those big-time games. And he wasn't able to do that. So, that'll be my slight hesitation. Maybe it was the quarterback play slightly. But if you're that guy, and you are a stud, you kind of you got to make your plays and you get yourself open.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're overmatched on a team, you can only do as good as the offense is getting done at that point. So, it was what it was. On some of the draft boards, I'm seeing actually a couple different teams pop up now. Maybe it's because PFF has him, various people had him evaluated lower. I'm seeing him at number 19 go to the Panthers. I'm seeing him at 23 going to the Eagles. I'm seeing him at 26 going to the Bills. Interesting. I hope he ends up at the Jets. That's the pick that I want them to make. We'll see if We'll see if that happens. Maybe he's a lower grade and they'll grab him in the second round. He falls.
You want the
I'm
Jets to reach that high on him for the number two pick?
No. The Jets have a number 16 pick.
Oh,
So, like, meaning if they're gonna go wide receiver and all the other guys, like, depending on if they could get value or anything, maybe they could trade back and then get him. We'll see. These are all things I hope, but I know the Jets are gonna mess it up anyway. So that's a lot of the wide receivers I wanted to talk about. Anybody else that you wanted to mention? Anybody crazy?
nobody's specific. I mean, outside of that, I mean, you're gonna have some role model player, guys that basically are not going to come in that be studs for fantasy, right off the bat. But players, I would always keep eyes on some of these guys. You really can't pass on a Georgia player. You got Zachariah Branch. Wasn't too flashy. But guys coming out of those big name schools, you always got to keep an eye on where they go. if he goes to a team that's in need of a wide receiver, it could pan out to be something big. So I mean, we saw it last year with injuries in Tampa Bay with Ebuka Nekaluka, right? Emeka
Emeka
Ebuka, Emeka Ebuka,
Egbegbu, as Gronkowski
Egbegbu,
would say.
whatever Gronkowski said. There is that opportunity for players to start popping off with injuries, in need. So you just never know. But again, fantasy wise, right now, I don't think that there's anybody that we really need to do a deep dive on.
Okay. Let's jump to the running.
I mean, Antonio Williams from Clemson should be a star wideout, but it's not going to happen year one.
Yeah, let's do a shameless plug for Mr. Thomas Lang on all of your Clemson information. Top on the list. Go to Mr. Lang. Um, let's jump to running backs, and this is very much I guess it's similar to the quarterbacks where you have one guy at the top and then everybody else. So let's talk about Jeremiah Love. So you know, PFF obviously loves him. Everybody loves him. Everybody should love him. He's fast. He's young. He's athletic. He's not tiny. He's everything that you could want for. He's the next guy in these line of super running backs that are drafted. Bijan, however many years ago. Uh, you know, Christian McCaffrey. You know what I'm saying, etc. Like these super guys that are drafted, and they're going to be drafted high. He's going to have high draft capital, similar to Saquon Barkley, etc. So really, we could sing his praises endlessly. Really, the question is where he goes, because honestly, as good as he's going to be on the field from a fantasy perspective, it really depends on where he's going. The most common destination is Tennessee at 4.
And I think that's where he's going.
I don't know about that. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I know that the odds makers have that as the highest, but the other common destination, which I think it's where it's going to end up, I might have to take a bet with you right now. I think he ends up at number 7 at Washington.
I don't think he's going to make it there. I think the only way that he makes it there is if Washington trades up to number 4 or trades up, to number 3 to grab him.
You don't think he makes it past 4? Like if he
No.
ends up and the Titans are there, you think they just take it?
Yeah, they don't need to pay Pollard. And they could go young with, a rookie contract right there and they're good to go. You still got Spears out there.
Okay. Well, let's assume he's here. Let's do a little foreshadowing. Let's assume he's drafted by the Titans at 4. That's unbelievable draft capital. A la Saquon, Bijan, etc. How high are we going to have him ranked? Ballpark.
He'll be an RB2.
I think he might end up being an RB1 for us at that point. I mean, it's an up and coming team, high draft capital. He's going to be the bell cow.
You're talking about Washington?
I'm talking about Jeremiah Love at Tennessee.
I think if he's at Tennessee, I think he's RB2. If
Okay.
somehow Washington makes their way up, he's an RB1.
Really? Okay. You
Yeah.
feel better about Washington. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, Washington, I mean, like we don't know exactly what's going on with our boy Austin Eckler. JCM is not a threat, as we made very clear. And Chris Rodriguez has been traded.
JCM is a threat to himself.
One other common destination that I'm seeing is Dallas at 12, but I don't know
It's
how
not
he's
happening. It's not happening. They just signed whatchamacall,
right.
Williams for 3 years. It's not happening.
Yeah, and I saw some weirdo rumors, I guess, earlier in the offseason about him going to the Giants. That's not going to happen either. I think
No.
I think what the Giants were doing was saying, oh, they might take him to make like if like the
The best
gamesmanship.
available situation. I mean, if he's there, I mean, why wouldn't you take Jeremiah Love and have also Scattaboo, and then you could just trade away Tracy?
Because they don't need that. That is
I
a
know
waste of
it
resources.
would be a horrible pick, but a fantastic pick at the same time.
It would be a horrible pick, horrible pick, horrible pick. Yeah, he's going to end up honestly from where we're sitting. It's only going to be Tennessee or Washington. I don't see any world where he goes anywhere else. Um, and you're firm on it. You think that it's going to be a Tennessee because they're not
Yeah.
going to be Washington's not going to trade up. Okay. Okay. Well, that's Jeremiah Love. We can't sing his praises enough. So believe it or not, next guy on the PFF list is actually his teammate, Jadarian Price. And I was amazed by this. Now, in the past, like, has it worked a lot? Like, the quote unquote backup or the change up running back, obviously being drafted or whatever at in the same thing and then it working out. I don't remember too many cases where that was the case for it.
I'll have to think back. It was Bush and what's his name that went to Tennessee. It was
Lendale White.
yeah, Lendale White. You know, Lendale White had a almost a rushing touchdown record at one point.
Okay.
So I mean, maybe
He
early
had one
on,
good year if I remember.
one fantastic fantasy year.
Yeah.
But then he was like, he was okay.
I think this situation has happened a few times in Alabama where they had a running back drafted and then their backup was also drafted or like the next guy or whatever it was. It's happened like a few years in a row with them. Either way, I'd sort of bring it up as a precursor to say I wasn't blown away by what I saw from him. I think he's perfectly good. I don't think he's a bad player or anything. I don't think he's the second best running back in this class, though, personally. I'll point out who I thought it was. But one common destination I'm seeing for him, and this is to be expected, is Seattle. Seattle's going to draft somebody at that second round. Maybe with I don't know if they're going to do it in their first round pick or maybe they do it in their second round. They're going to get somebody. They have to. They have Emmanuel Wilson and a returning Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, I think honestly they grab uh a guy that we haven't spoken about from Washington State.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Let's talk about the third guy, Mike Washington, that's out of Arkansas, big dude. Um, here's another guy who I thought like I think sometimes like in this mold of maybe he is not the quickest, but you kind of like in a Derrick Henry mold. He kind of gets the train going once you get the locomotive down the field a little bit. Very big dude. I could see him being a bruiser for a team. Maybe one of these teams like Tennessee or Washington, if they don't get love, they pick up one of these guys in the second round or whatever. You know,
Yeah, I think there's only really two running backs that are going to go in this first round this year, and
I think it might be one.
it's gonna well, Seattle's gonna have that opportunity to take him at 32.
And you think Seattle takes Price?
I don't think they take Price. I
You
think
think
I think they push on Price. They want to look for a guy that's actually that was a bell cow for their team, and I think Jonah Coleman is the guy.
and that's the guy that you're talking about and that you think is the best among everybody else then.
22, he's going to be
Yeah.
23. He's going to be 23 years old in this upcoming season. So he's a little bit older for running back. 5'9", 228. So he's a big guy, big
Yeah.
body
Very
guy
Maurice
for
Jones-Drewish. Yeah.
yes. And kind of like if you look at it, he is, what Charbonnet was coming in as a rookie. And losing Kenneth Walker, you got Charbonnet, you got him, and you also got Emmanuel Wilson. I think Jonah Coleman is a very, very, very solid player for that offense.
I agree with you. I saw a little bit about him. I immediately thought of Maurice Jones-Drew. I thought he was explosive. I thought he was athletic. I didn't get the whole bowling ball vibe that I've seen some people describe him as online. Did not get that vibe from it. I think he's great. And I actually agree with you. If I had to pick who I thought the second guy in this list among guys who are in this tier, I would say he's better. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would have Love above and beyond everybody else, and then probably I would have
His
Jonah Coleman next.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you go for 23, 24, 25, he went for 5, 10, 15 touchdowns. He went in increments of 5 touchdowns per year. So next year, if he gets drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, he'll have 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, this is accurate accurate analysis.
And
Those are the
he could catch the ball. And he could catch the ball.
and he can catch and pass. So those are the guys that I specifically wanted to get to. Any other names hit your fancy at the running back position?
No, outside of that, everybody else is, s- day two, day three. Not saying that again, not saying these guys are not going to be something. Guys that were drafted in the seventh round turned out to be fantastic players. We all see it. We all know who those players are. And I'm not talking about Tom Brady right now. I'm talking about, Brock Purdy and these other players that were drafted. Tom Brady is one of them. But anyway,
Ugh, get into that at some point.
But the thing is, there, we're only really kind of go over these like big, players that if they get drafted on some of these teams, what is the fantasy implication? Like,
Right.
if if he gets drafted, if Jonah Coleman gets drafted to the Seattle Seahawks, that kind of offense, how they move that ball, he is the perfect player for that offense of what they just lost.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Um, let's go to tight ends. And there's really two names to talk about. There's not more than that. And one of them is it's just it's a controversial thing, and it's basically playing into everything we talked about, uh, a little bit earlier this offseason. So top top prospect here is Kenyon Sadiq. First of all, before I say anything else about him, were you impressed by what you saw at the combine? I mean, the answer is yes, obviously. Like, I don't know how anybody could not be. It was one of the greatest combine performances of all time, probably. I think we could say. Um, Here's the thing, man. We talked about it in the offseason. It's these guys who are like, we're overemphasizing what you look like or how well you do in the combine, as opposed to what you did on the field. And he so did not shine on the field. But he's what, far and away like better than everybody else in history at the combine. So how do you reconcile that?
I mean, we talked about it. Combine stuff it's hit or miss, right? Like you're talking about Puka Nacua, a guy that was horrible at the combine.
Right.
Some people are just really good at the combine. Um, you just never know.
Yeah, and I,
Some people are good at lifting weights, running sprints, and when they put on the pads, it's not the same thing.
here's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to make a bold prediction now. I think he's going to get highly drafted, and we'll call out the teams in a minute. I think he's going to be highly drafted, and I think that I'm not going to say well, it'll be a bust based on where he's drafted, but I think he's going to just have an average enough NFL career, which you could define what you think. I don't think he's going to be special in any way. I just, for a guy this amazing and athletic and gargantuan, etc., he just did not dominate his peers. He didn't. And he was on a team in which it could happen from Oregon. So, and
Yeah.
it just did not happen. Meanwhile, the second guy from PFF, Eli Stowers, is absolutely a guy that I think can have a great NFL career. Does nowhere near the combine athleticism as Kenyon Sadiq, but it doesn't matter. Here's a guy who went and dominated out onto the field. Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. I forgot if I mentioned Vanderbilt. So here's the deal, though. We keep seeing these names associated with the following teams on draft boards. Uh, Baltimore keeps coming up a lot. The Panthers keep coming up a lot, and throw in the 49ers here and there. So if we if there's something to be believed there, I could see any one of these guys having. Now, I just said that Sadiq is not going to live up to whatever the draft capital is, but considering the need there, if it's Stowers going to the Panthers, I absolutely believe that that's a match made in heaven. I don't know about Baltimore. I mean, they're going to have an endless amount of supply of weapons there, and like we said, if it's Sadiq to Baltimore, which by the way, that would be pick 14. That's pretty high.
Yeah, and that is slightly ballsy after, the bait and switch of John Harbaugh basically paying
The Isaiah Likely thing,
yeah, but paying Mark Andrews so Isaiah Likely couldn't get paid by the Ravens. It gets paid by the Giants.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Uh,
know.
I don't know. I mean, I think that would be and I think they could. I think Sadiq is somebody that can be passed on. I think he's going to be a miss in on a team, to be honest. I think, Eli Stowers, that's the, he's your eight prototypical type of tight end, and he's produced it on the field. He doesn't have to be an everyday, basically every down target. But he's going to be, when the tough gets going, he's going to be the guy that's going to be able to, get those first downs. And he only had 4 touchdowns last year. He did 85 targets, 62 receptions, 769 yards. So decent for what he had. But if he gets a better quarterback, Diego Pavia is good. That team outperformed what they should have done last year, overperformed. Um, but I think he'd be a nice centerpiece for the passing room, and also he's a big guy, so he'd be a good blocker as well too.
I agree. I'd like to see like we're saying with the Baltimore situation. I think I don't want to see either one of these guys just get buried behind Andrews for the first X amount of years of their
No,
career. The Panthers to me seems like the best destination for either one of these guys. Although I will say that the farthest that I'm seeing any of them fall, or sorry, the farthest that I'm seeing Sadiq fall, which should let you know about which teams need tight end. Sadiq to number 28 to the Texans. That's a decent enough destination. Dalton Schultz is not a world beater or anything. So that could be good. That being said, we have high hopes for Stowers. We're very, very scared about Sadiq. I can just say this from a fantasy perspective. If Sadiq ends up getting drafted high, and let's say in the top 20 picks, he's going to be highly drafted from a fantasy perspective. And you know how we feel about that. In general, we're going to be hands off. We're
yeah.
telling you to punt the position at that point. So um, it's really interesting. This is everything that we talked about in the offseason about this with the combine thing. This situation between Sadiq and Stowers is really going to put it to the test. You have combine guy versus perform on the field guy. So we'll see how it translates to the
Maybe Miami
NFL.
pulls the trigger and instead of taking a guard or a tackle, which they need, maybe they they take Sadiq over there.
Maybe you're right. So that's all the functional positions. Just in general, off the top of our heads, I mean, we could talk about some of the domination from, some of the superstar defensive players or offensive linemen. It really doesn't have any, it doesn't have any fantasy impact. Just to mention personally, at the 2 pick, I really hope that the Jets, as scheduled, take David Bailey, the edge rusher from Texas Tech. That's who I hope they take. I think he's the best guy in the draft. Um, for the at that position. And you're hoping that the Giant are you hoping that the Giants indeed go with Tate, or would you be happier with them with a tackle or an edge player?
I think they've made some pretty successful moves this offseason that they can afford to take that sexy pick at the fifth pick. So yeah, would it be but I would also feel more comfortable with that pick if Dexter Lawrence is signed for that long-term deal, even though he has 2 more years on his contract and he wanted out of New York for some reason. He just wanted he wanted an extension. Um, if they lose him somehow, then they have to go wider, and they basically make a trade, which I said earlier, the Brian Thomas thing potentially being in the mix. Then they have to go, defensive line, potentially, or linebacker, bolster that linebacking room, and then, get something for it when it comes down to defensive tackle. I mean,
I'm surprised you
Clemson's got a
wouldn't.
defensive tackle out there that just replace one Clemson with another Clemson. But
There it is, the Clemson thing. I'm surprised you wouldn't have been screaming from the rooftops for the Giants to get the two top tackles, Francis Maigua, I think I pronounced his name right, or Spencer Fano. Spencer Fano, super talented from Indiana. I'm surprised you wouldn't have been excited about either one of them.
yeah, I mean, I'd be excited for that, but again, I've seen I've seen the Giants draft tackles and Giants draft offensive linemen, and it's they're not on a team, or they're not as sexy as they were when they were drafted. So, there was a couple players that were just going, it was just gonna be, and they had to be, and it was gonna be the greatest pick of all time. Well, it was the worst pick of all time.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it goes. We're gonna be spending a good chunk of the latter part of April and May doing some reactions to the draft and really breaking down what we're kind of our initial thoughts about what we're seeing about the team post the guys that they pick up from the draft. So we'll be excited to share that with you guys. So there we go. That's our little draft preview. We'll see if any of the things come to fruition. Final predictions here, because again, we're being very hometown. Who do the Giants take at 5?
They're taking Tate.
Okay. I think at two, the Jets pull the trigger on David Bailey. Yep.
All right.
That's the prediction. All right, cool. Any closing
And
thoughts, Mr. Lang?
yes, if you wanna basically put that bet on
Oh.
Kelsey, let's see.
Let's
No,
take a
but I
look.
truly appreciate everybody that takes the time to watch our videos. If you could please like, share, and subscribe, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.